All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to learn about my project that I completed in partnership with the Parkinson's Exercise and Wellness Center. I completed this as part of fulfillment for the Master of Public Health degree at the University of Kansas Medical Center. And I had three people on my committee. My chair was Dr. Miller. My first committee member was Dr. Pacheco. And then I also partnered with Dr. Spanger Blake, as everybody knows her here, to inform the community aspect of the project. So we'll go over a few things today. Mainly what informed the project, how it was framed, what questions we asked care partners, who participated, what we learned from that participation, and what is next for this sort of research or this topic. So what informed this project? As many care partners and people with Parkinson's disease know, it is a growing public health concern. The rate of Parkinson's disease is projected to increase by 55% by 2050, leading to a total of 25.2 million cases. It is the highest growing neurodegenerative condition along with Alzheimer's. So in this population of people that are getting diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, there's a subset of rural communities that face limited access to specialized care that are also getting diagnosed at higher rates, if not the same rates as other communities, and they don't have access to movement disorder specialists and things like that. So many people may choose to relocate or move to access the care that they need. And to the best of current knowledge, there's not really much research that explores the intersection of relocating, providing care, and Parkinson's disease in Kansas. A lot of the state is rural, so that's important to note. And this was recently cited in another article kind of featuring the center, but I pulled it also for my literature review. But Kansas is second only to Nebraska in new Parkinson's disease diagnosis, and that was from a study period of only 2.5 years. So you can imagine that there's a lot of people in the state that are getting diagnosed, and it's important to highlight the experiences that care partners are experiencing. And again, thinking about just Kansas as a whole, it's pretty rural. And 34% of older adults live in rural Kansas. And just drawing back to what I said, there's not a lot of opportunity for specialized care. So there's less than 10 practicing rural movement disorder specialists in the entire United States. And thinking about the United States as a whole, there's only 660 that are practicing in the movement disorder specialist category. So thinking about that, we also wanted to highlight care partners' emotional investment in caring for their person with Parkinson's disease. So that was pretty important. Caring is something that is a large emotional, physical, logistical burden, and it requires a lot of support. And thinking about the environment, these things need to change as care demands change. So that kind of informed our questions that we wanted to ask. And we really looked at this from a stress process model. So this was framed in this way. So we have our context, which is caring for a person with Parkinson's disease. And I included in the state of Kansas because I think Kansas has a unique landscape and unique communities, and that tie to the rural aspect of care. And then also, the person had to have considered relocating or had to have relocated. And we also picked people that attend the Parkinson's Exercise and Wellness Center. That's kind of where our care partners came from. So we have that context, and then we broke it down into primary stressors, secondary strain, and outcomes. So within this stress process model, they talk about how there's that first big push of things that like make you consider making a choice about something. In this case, it's relocating. So it's those subjective stressors, the main one for care partners being uncertainty. And then also there's objective things as well. So things that you can't necessarily ignore, like PD progression. The secondary strain is sort of also in this subjective, but it's just things that compound once you have that initial consideration of making a change or relocating. What else compounds with that to really push the outcome. And what are the outcomes? So we found that there was emotional outcomes, outcomes with perceived health status, and also social participation. And at the bottom with all that is mediators and supports. So what things in your life, what things are you doing that mediate the stress, that support the decisions that care partners are making? So we kind of framed our questions that way and sought to understand, in what ways does relocating coupled with Parkinson's disease progression impact care partners' support networks and their well-being? So we specifically asked care partners 4 questions, and then I had a subset of questions that were probes as well. So this was guided by that stress process model. We kind of hit on each of the 4 components: the primary, secondary, outcomes, and resources. And so if you can see here, we had some that did not relocate, but they heavily considered it. So we had a little bit of a comparison when it came to the interviews. And so the questions are very similar between the two. Just for example, the main difference is for question 3, for example, how did relocation affect your own physical health versus how has caregiving in your current location affected your own physical health? So they weren't very different questions. And then we also captured some demographic data via companion survey with the interview questions. So once we kind of did the interviews, we looked at who participated. So the final sample included 8 care partners total, all of whom were spouses to the person with Parkinson's disease for which they care for. And they are all members of the local community fitness center, being Parkinson's Exercise Wellness Center. There were participants that had either relocated or seriously considered the relocation. And in that, there were a total of 8 moves. So of the 5 care partners that moved, some of them moved more than once. So they would move long distance, and then they would move into a care facility, or they would move long distance and then make another short distance move in order to accommodate the person they're caring for in their home environment. So what we learned, the way that I coded these was tying them back to the stress process model and looking for patterns in each of those domains that are listed here: the primary, secondary, mediators, and outcomes. And I transcribed the interviews from the conversations I had with care partners. They were recorded, transcribed them, cleaned them up, removed identifying information. And once I did that, I started looking at patterns. So some of the patterns that I initially saw are included here. Notably, there's like a loss of independence that kind of drove decisions around the home environment. And with that, it kind of coupled with needing to make home adaptations or lifestyle transitions that also drove relocating or moving or changing the home environment. And then in terms of mediators, a big one was the access to medical care and also social support. A lot of people cited family, having family in this area as a driving factor for being located here, or like staying located here or moving to this area. And then in terms of outcomes, there was some big outcomes around emotional, physical, and spiritual impacts of relocating and also caring for a person with Parkinson's disease, and some changes in identity and relationships as well. So that was like the initial look. So I did all the interviews, and then I looked at all of the transcripts from what people said after they were de-identified, and this is what I first saw. And then as we broke it down further, I had 4 themes. So the first theme is that when Parkinson's changes, home decisions change too. And that includes changes to cognitive and mobility related day-to-day tasks. So if cognition is declining or mobility is declining, that disrupts routines and causes people to have to make a change. So I've included some quotes as well to support these from what I was seeing in the data. And then also thinking about the uncertainty of the future, that really complicates how and when to change the home environment. It highlighted really the complexity of these decisions, and uncertainty about the future is really a big one. Participants described waiting and seeing what might happen and balancing that approach with the immediate needs. So you're trying to anticipate future decline, but you also have the immediate needs that you have to address. So the uncertainty was a big one across all interviews. And then theme 2 kind of, I don't know what I clicked. There we go. Theme 2 goes into what makes home decisions difficult. So there was quite a few things that made them difficult, that being taking on more labor in the home and planning all of the logistical components of moving, or even just managing the home completely, finances completely. It made it hard for care partners to know when it was the right time to move or change their home environment, and also to have the capacity to make those changes or to navigate those changes. So many cited being like the pillar in their home that manages their person with Parkinson's disease care and the home itself. And so with that, there's social and community contexts, again, that help drive the decision. And that was mainly family. So this care partner mentioned that all of their kids and their grandkids live here, so they are not going to leave this area. They are staying here for their foreseeable future. And these are all considered secondary strains. So they highlight the broader structural, social factors that shape decisions around moving for care partners. And then we have theme 3, which is just that support makes home environment changes possible. So having support is what allowed care partners to adapt their home environment or move. And many of them cited outsourcing tasks. So getting help where they need it, getting people to mow the lawn, take care of the house, maintain the home. Also, just learning from other care partners was a highly cited sort of support that was important for moving. So if they knew somebody that had already moved or knew somebody that had experience with a care facility, care partners that had those social connections were able to leverage them in their own decision making. And with that, it kind of brings us to our fourth and final theme, which is that these decisions affect identity and well-being. So again, it's not an easy choice that many people make when they decide to move, especially care partners, and the amount of downsizing and logistics that it takes to get to a place where they feel safe with their person with Parkinson's disease, and caring for them was really important. But it was also rewarding for those that chose to move. So some of them cited that they wouldn't do it any other way, that it was something that they needed to do. And that being a part of this community at PWC has been phenomenal for them. And these findings just illustrate how these decisions are things that go beyond logistics, that go beyond just well-being and relationships. It really involves a sense of identity. And people and their sense of identity plays a big factor in if they move or don't move, and where they move and how. So all these 8 interviews I did were something I cherish deeply. I was so grateful to all the care partners that spoke with me for telling me parts of their story and trusting me with that. So what is next for this? So I'm presenting today, kind of bringing just the general findings back to the community and the staff here. But we do plan to kind of submit this work, and in that we can consider including more diverse groups of care partners. I think these were only spouses. I think maybe the adult children that care or siblings that care may have a different perspective. And then also maybe kind of pinning down some people that don't relocate from rural, that get diagnosed and stay where they are, and what drives that decision would be important to look into next. Also considering other community contexts, particularly churches was a big one, faith-based organizations that offer support to people with Parkinson's, but we didn't include in this sample just because we kept it pretty narrow to this context of the fitness center. And then also maybe developing and testing interventions that help care partners during this transition. So some care partners citing just needing like a resource bank or needing a point of contact that would help them make these choices because they just weren't sure, particularly when it came to moving the person they care for into a care facility. So that was a lot in a short amount of time, but I am open to questions. If anybody has questions about anything we talked about, the methods, who participated, things like that. Blake asked me questions at my defense, so yeah. Yeah.
How many interviews over this time did you do? Were there like sequences of like, okay, let's get to know you? And then did you find out of any of those 8 interviews that over that amount of time anything had significantly changed since the first
Yeah. So Sarissa's asking how many interviews over this amount and over what amount of time and how the process was started. Like, did it start with introductions and then easing into the interview? And if anything changed from the start of the process to the end. So this was all semester, it felt like. So it's 16 weeks. I probably spent maybe 8 weeks of that 16 weeks recruiting for interviews. Some of the care partners I knew from being here in the fall and having the privilege of doing my internship here. So that was an easier like buy-in for them because they knew I was a student. They kind of trusted me a little bit. And then for those that I didn't know, it was very much just like a cold email, cold phone call. And everybody in this context was so welcoming, so open to talking to me. It didn't take long to like warm up. I didn't have to really ease anyone into it. I maybe only met with people once before. I had gone to care partner support groups and presented the topic and kind of gave an overview of what I was doing. And we were able to recruit one person through that. So they had that interaction with me, and then they had the interview, and including emails too. But it was very much just like, do you want to participate? And they said yes, and we would meet the next day. So everybody was really open that I interviewed, and it was 8 interviews over the course of 8 weeks, so about one a week. But what really happened is it was like 3 one week and none for 2 weeks, and then 4 the next week. It just, yeah. And everybody was so open to helping because I was a student and I presented this as a student project because that's what it is. But now that we've kind of gone through it all, I think it's pretty valuable, and we would love to get it out there in a journal in a professional context too. I'm also presenting this at the Kansas Public Health Association conference in October. So we'll have a little poster and be able to talk more about it there too. Is there questions online? Sorry, go ahead.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yes, this was a successful defense for the recording, so you guys know.
I'm good. I've been stopped recording.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I also have my references if we need that. Ta-da. All right, Blake, so let me